Star Trek books. They've been around for decades. Join us, the Trek ladies, Kavora and Jen, as we discuss the novels one at a time. Welcome to the Ladies Trek Library.
Hello, and this is Ladies Trek Library, and we're back with another book. And I am Kavora, and I'm here with Jen. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Kavora. And hey, listen. I'm happy to be back talking about Star Trek books.
So this time we have Star Trek The Next Generation book, Guises of the Mind, by Rebecca Neason. And I'll just read what's on the back cover. The world, Capulon IV, is finally ready to join the Federation after years of waiting. All that remains is the ruler's coronation and a routine signing of the final treaty. When the crew of the USS Enterprise and their passengers, a group of women from a religious order dedicated to helping the downtrodden, arrive for the event, they expect to find a world willing and happy to receive them. Instead, they encounter deceit and treachery. The Crown Prince, once excited and eager to join the Federation, now refuses even to speak with Captain Picard. Beaming to the surface in an attempt to work out the problem, Picard, Troi, and Mother Veronica, the abbess of the nuns, are drugged and captured. Now they must somehow escape and stop the crowning. If they cannot prevent it, the king will be omnipotent, with the power to destroy the Starship Enterprise and all of Capulon IV as well. Okay, so that is it. So this book had, there's a lot of stuff about religion. I just wanted to say this as sort of an intro first. And I read that a lot of this is based on the Catholic religion, and I don't really know much about that, about Catholicism or anything. But what we have is there's a group called the Little Mothers, and they are like Catholic nuns who have this who run orphanages on. They started on Earth, but now they've expanded to a lot of other different planets, including both Federation and non-Federation planets. Do you want to add anything else about the Little Mothers?
No, I actually went to Catholic school for a year, although I'm not Catholic.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I still don't know a whole lot. I do probably know more about Catholicism than the average non-Catholic person, but probably still not enough. Yeah, it was interesting. The order, it's not a real order. The school that I went to was run by a real order called the Sisters of Notre Dame, which are an organization dedicated to educating women and girls. So there's different orders of nuns have different missions. So this was plausible to me as as the school I went to was an order about educating women and girls. It's plausible there was an order that is dedicated to helping orphans and the downtrodden. They said anyone who's downtrodden, but throughout the story it's mostly children and orphans. So that was believable, and it was a little. I wonder. I had read a little bit about the author Rebecca Neason. It did say that she mostly wrote for religious publications. It did not specify if they were Catholic. So it'd be interesting. I did try to find out a little bit more about that, but didn't see anything. So.
Oh, that's interesting. And this is the only Star Trek book that she wrote. I thought I read that she did read she wrote some other science fiction books.
Yeah, she did. She wrote, I think it looked like, from what I looked, more like fantasy. She looked like she did a Highlander story and some original fantasy, but only a Star Trek book. And I can see why this was her only Star Trek book, because apparently it took about 7 years to get published. Originally she had submitted it as an original series story back in 1985, and it was called The Gift of Silence. And at that time, there were, no Next Generation wasn't on the air yet, so there was no Next Generation novels. They liked the idea, but thought that it didn't have enough action and adventure, and told her, maybe later we'll be interested. And then she had kind of reworked it as the Next Generation story, and submitted it they told her that they liked it, but didn't want a story focusing on telepaths and telepathy at that time. So it went through several times where they said they liked the story, but just not now, before it eventually got published 7 years later. So, yeah, I can see she probably was like, well, that was a very long process.
Yeah, and I don't want to go through that again, so no more Star Trek, right?
Yeah. So what I found was interesting is, and I agreed with her when she submitted it as a Next Generation story. They said, well, we really don't want a story that's about telepathy, but Deanna Troi is, one of the main characters in this book, and she's like, so you don't want a story about Deanna Troi, who's the main character on the show. But I am curious, when she wrote it as an original series novel, obviously Deanna Troi wouldn't have been in that. So I'm curious about how the telepathy worked in that. Was that all about Vulcans and Spock? I couldn't find any information on that, but that's interesting.
Yeah, it definitely could have been about Vulcans. So the first character we want to talk about is Mother Veronica. And, excuse me, sometimes I might call her Mother Teresa. I keep switching like Mother Teresa. But anyway, so it is Mother Veronica. She is one of the little mothers, and she's the leader. Like in this book, it's just her and one other person. So she's the one that's supposed to be in charge of this trip where they're going to Capulon IV. And she's a very strong telepath, we come to find out. And it's not part of her work or anything. It's something that she has always feared. It's just something, and she's a human, and it's not something that is normal for where she's from or her family or anything. What did you think about her character?
Yeah, she was interesting, being a main character who's a telepath, who's not a betazoid, and who's human. And she also, we would expect, we have had stories where there have been some humans with telepathy, and it's been on the show a little bit, and with exposure to, other planets, there's more that they know about telepathy, but she lived a pretty isolated life, staying her whole life pretty much on the same planet, a planet where there are no telepaths, and where a lot of people view telepathy as something negative. And so it's something that she feared and really didn't want. So we haven't really seen that in anything that I've read or seen, Star Trek related. A telepath who really feels it's a burden, doesn't want to be a telepath, and really doesn't understand much about it. And it's just, she's sort of having a nervous breakdown because, on her home planet, she's living in a place where it's a lot of quiet, other nuns, and then once she comes aboard the Enterprise, there's all these people and all these thoughts, and she can't get them out of her head, and it's disturbing her.
I did feel like, it was just so extreme, her problems that she was going through, and all of this worry and fear that she had, and she just couldn't control it. It was a different concept, as you said. Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this where telepathy is looked on as, like, where she thought of it as a curse. And, and the book says, as a child, the other kids called her a demon, or possessed by a demon, because she could read their minds. And we've never thought of telepathy that way. It's always considered a good thing or a gift, and that's what Troi told her. Like, what she knows about it is, like, even humans value someone who was a telepath. So it's really a foreign concept to us. I did have the thought, well, if she was in the Babylon 5 universe, she would have been picked up by the Psi Corps, and they could have made her into a different type of person. But
I didn't think about that, but you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, and I just don't know if it's realistic. I mean, obviously realistic in the concept that we're talking about, science fiction, but she, even when Counselor Troi was trying to help her and tell her how, explain how she could use it as a skill, and train herself to block out, to put up shields to block out things she didn't want to hear. She was just so resistant and just so negative. And it kind of was hard for me to believe that, someone who has dedicated their lives to helping other people, was just so resistant in this one thing. It almost seemed like a split personality kind of thing.
Yeah, she was sort of like her own worst enemy. And so the book says she grew up with this telepathy, but also not knowing how to shield it. She couldn't shield other people's thoughts. And I was wondering, how could you not? It seems like it would have been like a self-preservation thing. Even if no one was around to help her with it, she would have learned to develop shields. It just seems like she would have had to, because when at the time she's on the Enterprise here, it's like it's something that's almost killing her. It's almost driving her insane. So yeah, exactly. And then when Troi starts helping her, she still seems resistant, or can't or won't learn to bring up her shields. It's something that's very hard for her. It does seem strange. And also, as far as her religion, because we find out she's also very religious, and it's not like there's something written, because she quotes scriptures. It's not like there was something written in the scriptures that it was evil to read minds or something. It's just something that she said the other kids made fun of her for it, and her mother didn't know what to do with her, so her mother had left her at the steps of the Little Mother's orphanage. So she has this torrid past, even though she still clings to her religion and still is a very faithful person. And that is another thing. She has this religion where you have to be faithful. As I read, everything in this book, her religion is based on the Catholic religion. It is something built on faith. So next we can go to the characters Jokal and Biorum. They are two characters that were on the planet Capulon IV. So Jokal is the one who's the rightful ruler. He's going to be crowned the king. And then you have Biorum, who is his twin brother that no one knows about. And this planet has kind of a stigma against twins. Now it's also a very religious planet. They're based on this religion, and one of the things is they think that twins are evil, so the second born has to be killed. So what did you think about these characters, the planet, and their religion?
Well, first I'll say I wish that all these Star Trek books came with a pronunciation guide for names and names of alien races and characters. I've been calling them Joakal and Beohorum. So I have no idea how they're supposed to be pronounced, but that's how I say them.
I kind of made it, less syllables, but okay.
So Joakal and Beohorum were twins. Joakal was the older twin, and Beohorum was the younger one, who was, in the olden days they said the younger twin would be killed, as would anyone who has any sort of disability. Now they're still killed, but now they, humanely euthanize children who are born with disabilities, or any, multiple birth twin, second twin. What happened with Beohorum is that the person who was supposed to take him to the temple to be euthanized couldn't go through with it, and ended up taking him somewhere else to be raised, in secret, by another family. So Joakal is about to become the king. He, on this planet, you become king when you turn 30, and, seems to be a good leader, someone who's very progressive, who's looking to do away with some of the bad things, I guess it's a perspective, but he wants to end, this, law they have about euthanizing twins, or about, euthanizing children with disabilities, and he has a lot of other plans for changes to make what he thinks will make his world a better place, which includes joining the Federation. He doesn't know about his twin brother, Beohorum, and I guess the issue that I had with this is that, So it wasn't totally clear to me if he grew up knowing, Beohorum grew up knowing that he was the king's son, that he was the twin brother of the crown prince. At some point he learned that, if he didn't know it all along, and ended up getting into a plot to replace his brother. I guess I felt like it was too much of a, the old story of the good twin and the evil twin. Even though I thought they were interesting characters, I really had a hard time believing that Beohorum, despite having grown up, and I don't think he grew up poor. It made it sound like he grew up in a modest household with parents who loved him, would become such an evil person and just completely consumed by jealousy of his brother, who was the prince. So that was like the main issue I had with these two characters. It just seemed, even at the end of the story, there's not really 1 minute where you see where he has any kind of goodness in him. He's just like a flat evil kind of character. And I just don't think people like that exist in real life, where, that's a pretty limited number of people. What did you think?
Yeah, like even for Star Trek characters, you would think they would be more complex, I guess. And I kind of had that feeling too, that they were kind of stock characters, because the one that was the rightful heir, he was good, and he was all good, and then Beohorum was bad and, evil, and he was all evil, like no gray area there. So yeah, it was like that. And when Beohorum was growing up, I was kind of thinking that he always knew, but I'm not sure exactly if the book did say that. But somehow from somewhere I got that impression that he had always wanted to do this, to take his brother's place. But it is it's very stereotypical that they are like this. Like, you have the good king and the bad king. And even if they had grown up together, there would probably still have been, like one good and one bad. It still could have been done that way too. But they wanted it to be like no one knew that he had a twin, because these people didn't believe in twins, and it had been kept secret that the twin brother had to be killed. But they knew that but it was their custom to do that. And the idea that the good king Jokal wanted to, he was going to change all that. That is something interesting too. The fact that he felt that, like, well, we don't need to kill someone just for being born. So I like that idea, and I do, like him as a character. I think it worked, even though he was kind of a stereotypical good guy. It still worked for the story. And I noticed, like, just as we were talking about it, how Beohorum and Veronica were both kind of, they had something in common, that they were not raised by their birth parents, even though Veronica was in her early years, and she was left by her mother later on. But that is interesting, that they were both kind of abandoned and raised by other people. And so you see how they both turned out being disturbed.
Yeah, I didn't make that, I didn't even think about that when I was reading it. But yeah, and I will say, I do feel like Jokal was maybe a little bit more nuanced than Beohorum. He was the good guy, but there were some, I don't want to say flaws that made him bad, but you saw, like, he made some mistakes. He didn't talk about his plans for the future with his advisors, which ended up hurting him in the long run, because he had an advisor who, had he known what his plans were, maybe would not have gotten involved in Beohorum's plot to overthrow Jokal. And he admits that later. I should have told my advisors what my plans were. He was kind of keeping it all in.
That is true. He learns a lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, not pretty good guy with really no major character flaws.
And also, it turns out that they're a very religious planet, which is probably why, and the book says Jokal is the one who wanted the little mothers to come there. So that's another thing that fits. It's sort of the whole story is about both religion and telepathy. Oh, and we also get into the thing about telepathy with the king and how they are actually telepaths, but their minds are shielded until they become king, and then they're not shielded anymore. But that's another interesting part of the story and how it relates to Mother Veronica.
Yeah, that is interesting. So it's a planet where apparently everyone used to be telepaths, and there were a lot of wars, and very bad wars where a lot of people died, and when the planet came to peace, they sort of lost their telepathic abilities. And the only one who really has strong telepathy is the king, who develops this upon being crowned king. And I do talk about some other minor characters like that we're going to talk about later. Phelan, who's a religious leader, who does have some telepathy more than the average person on the planet, but not like to the extent where he can, read everyone's mind and know everything. But he has some sense. So it's kind of interesting how all the people on this planet had, lost their telepathic ability.
So now when we talk about Troi, and we've talked about her some, but she's one of the main characters in this book, and especially out of the Enterprise crew, she's the main character for this story. So we see a lot more of her work and how she feels about it. And like at the beginning of the story, she says that she is just exhausted from work, and she also has a failure. There's someone that, well, to her, she considers it a failure. There's an Enterprise crew person that she wasn't able to help, and so this person is going to leave Starfleet and probably won't be back. And she kind of blames herself, but it's actually someone that really isn't cut out for this type of work, and that happens, and she knows that, but she still feels like she's a failure. What did you think about Troi in this book?
Yeah, well, Troi is my favorite Next Generation character, so I love any books where she's the main character. And yeah, I thought this really gave us some insight into her job as a counselor. What we saw in Next Generation was more about her assisting the captain, and the other command crew in, reading the feelings of different aliens that they encounter. But we didn't really see too much of her as a counselor helping the crew members on the ship. So we really see what it's like. She's has two situations she's dealing with. One, as you mentioned, is a crew member who she really could not help, and she really feels like she failed because this person's leaving Starfleet. And then there's another crew member who she's also helping that she's really sort of feeling like a failure with. A person who's grieving the loss of his father, with whom he hadn't seen him in a long time, did not have a good relationship with him, and she just seems to be unable to help him get through his grief. So she is really feeling stressed out and like she's not adequate in her job as counselor. And then on top of it, she tries to assist Mother Veronica to learn to have use her telepathy to at least to have a shield so that she's not, bombarded by these emotions and thoughts from other people, and she seems to be failing at that. So she's really having a hard time.
Yes, and then especially once they beam down to the planet, and like this is a major part of the story where Troi and Picard get kidnapped, and Troi is trying to help Mother Veronica. Even once they get kidnapped, she's still trying to help her with her telepathic abilities, and still Veronica is still so resistant to it. Everything, even being probably because she is so stressed by the situation that she becomes even harder to help, and so we do see a lot of how Troi is just under a lot of pressure and really under a lot of stress here. And she probably handled it well for everything she had to do. It was just different to see like how much she had to work. I like how they added a few Betazoid words in here. That like they had a word for building up your shields and a word for for strengthening your shields. I kind of like that, adding more to her culture, and thinking back to some things in her past, and she does think about her mother and how her mother was a strong telepath, and they also said that Troi was the highest rated empath on her planet. That was interesting too. It's just something like, oh yeah, that's something they never said on the show, but that was neat.
Yeah, that was interesting, and it makes you wonder, does that have something to do with the fact that she's half human? Who knows?
Yeah, could be. And so the book also had sort of a storyline with Data, where he is because you have the little mothers on the Enterprise, and the Data wants to know more about religion. So he goes around asking all the different people how they feel about God or what's their religion. What did you think about Data?
Yeah, I mean, this is what Data has done in a lot of episodes. There's a particular topic that he becomes interested in, and so he starts, he kind of becomes obsessed with it, and does a lot of research on it, and asks everybody questions. And we're actually seeing that in the book that I'm reading now, another book, The Romulan Stratagem, where Data has a little obsession with something else. Yeah, so I mean, that fit right in with his character. And of course, I thought it was interesting and realistic too, because the things that Data tends to, when he gets into these modes where he's really curious about something, it's something that he can't just read and learn facts about. And of course, asking about religion or God, different people, even of the same species, are going to have different beliefs. And then, of course, you got to take into account, you have different alien races on the Enterprise, and so you've got all different kinds of alien beliefs too. And he's really trying to understand everything. And so I thought it was fascinating. And they talked about a little bit how he read, religion from different, not only different human religious history, but Vulcan and some other races. And then one of the people that he asks is Guinan. So we get a little bit of perspective from her belief about religion. And I thought that was a very interesting conversation with Data and Guinan talking to him about God.
Yeah, Guinan's it's funny how she could be a counselor in a lot of ways. That's been shown on lots of episodes where she almost acts like a counselor, but her style is very different from Troi, because she's not trained as a counselor. She just talks to people, and she's very good at it. And she does seem to know the answers, even if she doesn't say it exactly. It's like she's this mysterious person who seems to be so wise and everything.
Yeah.
And so Data talking to her was very interesting. And it's kind of ironic that like Mother Veronica never went to talk to Guinan in this book, did she?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, like she could have gotten some answers too about some things about how she feels about herself, and that would have been neat, but
that would have been an interesting conversation.
So now we can let's go on to some of the other characters in the book. There were some other characters down on Capulon IV. Phelan, the one that they call the chief servant, and he was sort of like, what do you like the chief religious leader of the planet? Would you say?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
What did you think about him?
I mean, he was a more sort of nuanced character. I'd say more human, but he's not human. But more well-rounded. He is the chief religious leader. He does have some stronger telepathic abilities, but he's flawed. He's kind of tired of his job. He didn't really have ambitions to be the leader. He got promoted, sort of. He was picked, and he's like ready to retire. So that's, all he can think about right now is he's tired, he wants to retire, he doesn't want anything standing in his way. So, that seemed kind of like a realistic character to me.
Yeah, it's, when you're reading it and the way he was talking to Alana, it all seemed like, oh, can't this guy get a clue? But then I do understand that he would, I mean, he's thinking more about retirement, and if you're in his shoes, you might do the same thing, like you're not thinking, like he wasn't thinking about, what to do if someone is different and really needs help, and just consider maybe something weird is going on, but he just wasn't ready to consider that. So that was his flaw, but then you understand where he's coming from, because he just doesn't want any more surprises or anything.
I mean, you could almost compare him to like some flawed leaders in religious history, as far as, obviously you can tell he's someone who is a good person, but he's not really able to look outside of, he can't really think outside the box. He's, if it doesn't fit into what he believes, he has a really hard time. And it's not that he's a bad person, he just, can't go outside that box.
Right. And so we have Alana, who was the one that was Joe Cal's girlfriend. What did you think about her?
She was meant to be, like the perfect, it was almost just fake how perfect she was.
Yeah.
And of course they had to mention that she had been torn between, she was so religious and pious that she had thought her whole life about joining the religious order. So she was really torn about whether or not she wanted to marry Joe Cal, or she wanted to become a member of the religious order. And she had to go away and pray for a while before she decided she was going to marry him. I mean, so, it just, she didn't really have a lot of depth. She was just too good to be true.
Yeah.
Kind of a boring character, I guess.
Well, I didn't quite see her as that bad. But, I mean, I didn't think she was boring, but like so when she's first introduced in the book, you see that she's his girlfriend, and I'm kind of thinking like, well, I didn't really think anything much. Like, she's probably not going to be important, but then she does become more important to the story later on. So yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, it's not that I didn't like her. I mean, you can't not like her. She does move the story along. There is a purpose of her in there. She has a role in assisting the Enterprise crew, to, escape and to, overthrow Beoharum. So she does serve a purpose, even if her character is a little, lacks depth.
Yeah, because it's always hard to find, a role for the character that's added to be the girlfriend. Like on all these shows with superheroes, and the superhero's girlfriend is always kind of like a less developed character. So she's kind of like that in this story, the king's girlfriend. But she does try to do some things in this book, and she fails. Like at first talking to Phelan, she kind of fails because he doesn't believe her at first, and then when she tries to contact Riker, and that's because of Phelan, but she failed at contacting Riker, so you kind of, in some ways I kind of like felt sorry for her, like she just couldn't quite get it done, but she tried so hard, and then when she got imprisoned, and then she found a way to escape, climbing down, and all that was interesting. So that to me made her a better character. Like, oh, she can do something. She has guts, and so she is a strong character, and so she is worthy of the king.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
And so, and then what do we think about Aclier? Now, he's the one that was the chief advisor to Joe Cal.
Yeah, he was a little more well-rounded of a character. You kind of at first think that he might be evil because he's helping Beohorum overthrow Joe Cal or replace him. But then you learn sort of the background, which is that he had a daughter who was blind and deaf, and so she had to be killed. And so not only that, but his wife was so despondent over this that she ended up killing herself. So he's been carrying all this grief around, and he really wants this law changed. And as I mentioned before, if Joe Cal had told O'Clear from the beginning that he had plans to change this once he became king, probably this wouldn't have happened. This whole story wouldn't have happened. But O'Clear is just so desperate to see this change that when he encounters, he kind of sort of he thought it was random that he randomly came across Beohorum, but looking back, he then realizes that Beohorum may have set the whole thing up. He felt like that was the only way for laws to change would be to have Beohorum come into power. But once he realizes that Beohorum is really a monster, he's kind of trapped. And he, thinks about coming forward and doing the right thing, but he also feels like he can't because, that would be the end for him, knowing what he did. So he ends up with a, guilty conscience, but not strong enough to stand up and do the right thing.
Yeah, he was the sympathetic character in this. Someone who basically made a deal with the devil, and he did feel guilty about it, and he knew he was doing the wrong thing, but to him it was for the right reason. So, you do feel sorry for him, so that's something. Yes, so he was a good character, and I'm glad they put him in, like, it was necessary just to have this in the story, so you can, like, examine the customs of these people and see how, not everyone agrees with their customs, and you can see how it's not really working out very well for these people.
Yeah, that's true. So you see it, and of course he's he's an advisor to the king, so we know even people high up don't like these laws, but, don't really know how to change them. Of course, he thinks this is the only way, as you said, making a deal with the devil.
Yes, and so, any other thoughts on this, our characters, before we close out, or what?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, I do like the scene where, like they said, there was a chapel on the Enterprise it's put there just for the purpose of while the little mothers are there, and Picard goes and visits the chapel, and he says it reminds him of something from his childhood. There was a chapel he used to go to when he was a child, and it was a place of refuge for him. I just thought that was a good scene right there.
Yes, I did like that, how they, set up part of the Enterprise using, I don't think it was on the holodeck. I think it was in another room, but they used, like, holodeck technology to make this room sort of like a very old Catholic church in France. Mother Veronica goes in there, and Data goes in there and talks to her, and we have this story of Picard talking about how it's based off of the chapel near where he grew up that he had run and hidden in as a child. So that was a neat little bit in there, I thought.
Yeah. Okay, so I think, overall, a rating for this, I would say this was pretty good. I enjoyed reading that. I'm going to say 4 Quatloos.
I'm going to say 3.5. I did like it. I liked Troi in it. I thought the story, the whole story on the planet Capulon IV actually sort of even though this was not a planet that was, their technology was not as advanced as the Enterprise, but they did have technology. They just were choosing not to use a lot of it. But because of that, it almost seemed like it was taking place in the past. So it almost seemed like a fairy tale set in like the Middle Ages. And I did like that part of it, but just, as I mentioned, other issues I had was just the kind of the stock character of the good twin and the evil twin was a little old, but still overall I liked it, so I'd say 3.5 glasses.
And I did feel like it was, kind of Middle Ages like, but the people were, aware of the Federation. They were actually, that was something the king said he wanted them to join the Federation. So yeah, it was a species character or planet where they knew about that there was a bigger world around them, a bigger universe. And but yeah, the Middle Ages kind of setting and the way the book described everything, it was really good. I like that, and I like the study of religion. I usually like the Star Trek books that talk about religion. So that's another thing I liked about it, and even the talk about telepathy, that was all interesting too. The way they go more into how you would have a shield, and this is all stuff in the mind, but it was all very interesting the way the book described all of that. So yeah, I like that too. So that's good. So at least we both like the book.
Yeah, and I will say you pointed out earlier about the use of some of the Betazoid words, and I've seen a lot of books that I've read that have used Vulcan words and talked about things in Vulcan culture, and I just have not seen that too much with Betazoid stuff. Even books that I've read where Troi is the main character. So that was interesting to see that. And if there are other books out there and our readers know about them that talk about that, more Betazoid culture and language, let us know, because I don't know of any.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.